Namaste and welcome to Awaken Living with Nibodhi. The subject tonight is love, and for tomorrow night as well. As a matter of fact, I know of no better subject for us to discuss until we all die. Hafiz. That's my very favorite Hafiz poem, and that is, in fact, the subject of today's discussion love. It's the most important discussion we have. It's the most important thing because, in ultimate reality, that's all that matters. Most of us grow up believing that love is an emotion or a feeling or something that we can feel, and that's something that we can go in and out of. We can be in love, we can be out of love. It's something that we need to get from others or that we can receive from others. It can come and go depending on circumstances or the relationship or our emotional state. But if we look at it from a different perspective, if we look at it from any spiritual tradition, but especially the spiritual traditions of India, we can have a much deeper perspective, a much deeper understanding of it. But ultimately, every spiritual tradition is aiming at the same thing. The saying, there's many paths, but the truth is one, and that truth is love. And love isn't something that we can receive. Love is what we are. Love is who we are. And so many people think that the spiritual journey is a search for love, but it's not at all. The spiritual journey has nothing to do with seeking love. It's actually the removal of everything that's not love. It's all the spiritual practice, the sadhana, the tapas, the purification by fire. It's basically just removing all the obscurations that prevent us from having a direct experience of love, a direct experience of ourself. And what we call suffering is the experience, simply, it's the experience of separation of our own true nature. And then what we call healing is also very simple. It's the remembrance of our unity with all of life. Love is God. God is love. In the Vedic tradition, Brahman, the substratum of all existence, love is Brahman. Love is the self. There's no distinction. When we get to the fundamental non-dual awareness of who we are and what this universe really is, there's love. And on this material world, in this incarnation, love is essential. Love is essential anywhere in the universe. Amma says that love is the only medicine that can heal the wounds of the world and the root cause of all of our problems, whether it's personal problems or global problems. It's the absence of love. When you are in love, there's no limits, there's no boundaries, there's no separation, there's no walls, there's absolutely no fear. Pure love is transcendental love. It goes beyond body consciousness. We love our family. We love our own children, our own parents. We love our husband, our wife. We love our dog. But do you love the neighbor's wife? I'm not talking about like that, but do you have love for the neighbor? Do you have love for the neighbor's dog? Do you have love for the neighbor's neighbor's neighbor? Because we think of things as ours, we have specific kind of love for them. But can our love grow to be the neighbor and the community and the country and the whole planet and the whole universe? And when we can do that, love becomes the goal because we are living in that space of pure consciousness, what creation was for. And transformation into love is like the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. That's the goal. That's the purpose of human existence, is love. So today, I want to explore love as consciousness and why we think we don't have it and what we do when we don't have it, how we're going about seeking it, why sometimes it feels like we have it and sometimes we don't, and how to stay there, how to stay in that stream of consciousness of love, even during the pain, even during the heartbreak, even during all the grief and loss and sorrow, how to stay in love through all of it. And I'm not talking about emotional love. Emotions will come and go. They come and go all the time, just like thoughts come and go all the time. We feel joy and all of it. We feel sadness and we feel fear and anger and excitement, and we can also feel tenderness and vulnerability. And ultimately, these are just movements of energy. They're like a dance within the body-mind construct. They're just movements of energy dancing to their own accord if we're not in the state of pure awareness, pure consciousness. They're real. Those are real things. We're experiencing them, but they're not ultimate reality. They're temporary. What the word Maya means is illusion, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means it's not permanent. Love, in the deepest and truest sense of it, is not a temporary thing. It's universal. Love is the underlying field of consciousness from which all experience arise. It's the natural state of being. It's not just a human being, it's a natural state of being. In the Vedantic tradition, the non-dual tradition, the word that's attributed to this is Brahman. It's infinite, and it's the unchanging reality that pervades everything. And it really can't be understood by the mind. In the Tao, they point to this also. In the Tao Te Ching, they say the Tao that can be named is not the ultimate Tao. It's not the truest form of Tao. Like this, we can't, with the human intellect, which does have a limitation, understand something that's unlimited. There's really no adequate words in the human language that can describe that supreme state, Om Tat Sat, that supreme state of Brahman, of consciousness, of the infinite, with something that's finite. But love comes from Brahman, from that infinite source. We can talk about love all day long. We can write really beautiful, flowery poetry about it. I love to do that. It's fun. It feels good. We can write a #1 hit about love. The #1 best songs in the world are always about love or heartbreak and loss of love. We can do anything we want. We can do everything to try and describe how love feels, what love is, but somehow it really pretty much always falls short to what the actual experience of love is when we're in that state of love, of pure being in love. When we experience moments of that deep connection, whether it's through meditation practice or pranayama or a great yoga practice, or being in nature and in awe of the beauty of creation, or in a moment of intimacy with your partner where you and your partner dissolve and there's just presence. It can happen through deep, sincere prayer, through bhakti yoga, through chanting the divine name, getting lost. The individual ego gets lost and merges into that consciousness. It can also happen through seva, through selfless service, less self, less small self, less ego is involved. And we're thinking of the other as self, because in ultimate reality, there is no other. We're just in this state of love. And what happens in that is we're just accessing or touching what is already there. We're accessing that divine love. It's the direct experience or the direct relationship with the sacred, with the divine. And when we're truly living alive, every moment of life becomes an expression of that love if we live with awareness. Even in the struggle, even in the arguments, the love doesn't go away. And even in Ayurveda tells us that true health arises when we're truly in alignment with our inherent wholeness, love. So love is not just an emotion. Love is the essence of consciousness itself. And it's interesting because every human being seeks love. It in the description that they give in the Vedas is it's like the musk deer running around the forest seeking the fragrance of the musk. It's not realizing that the musk is coming from itself, and so it wanders around trying to find it everywhere it goes, asking the tree, asking the rabbit, asking the other animals, "Where's this smell coming from?" And they can't answer because it's coming from within. But every human being ultimately is seeking that love. And we do it in interesting ways. We chase after relationships. We become deeply attached to relationships because we think the love we're experiencing is coming from the other person. We chase after success and awards and recognition and in Instagram and Facebook and TikTok likes. Even we chase after it in spiritual experiences. We want to have the highest experience. We want to have a transcendental experience. But ultimately, the greatest experience is just love, which is beyond all experience. It's the nature of who we are. But ultimately, really, why we do that, why we're seeking love, I think, is that it all comes from the same longing. We want to feel whole. We want to feel connected. We want to feel that we belong. And, really, again, according to the Vedantic tradition, the longing exists because our true nature, our true nature is already whole. The longing exists is simply because we forgot what our true nature is. We're not really searching for something new. We're just trying to remember what has always been there. We seek love because we are, at our core essence, love itself. And that's why that's why feeling unloved or rejected feels so painful. It's not just hurting us emotionally. It almost feels like an existential issue, an existential crisis. It feels like we're being disconnected from life itself. And the issue is that the separation is not the ultimate truth. It's just a perception. It's actually a distortion. It's a distorted perception because our essential nature always remains intact. Even if we lose awareness of it, our essential nature is universal. It's infinite. It's eternal. It can't actually change. And so when we feel a lack of love, it's a feeling a disconnection from ourself, from the creation. And that's ultimately the root of all of our suffering. Okay? The opposite of love isn't hatred, it's the belief that we're separate. That's the core wound of all of humanity, is that we feel that we're separate. And from that, all these things come up. Hatred comes up, fear comes up, jealousy, grief can come up, shame, loneliness. All of these things come when we perceive ourselves as being separate, as being isolated, whether it's isolation from others, from the person that we thought we were in love with, or from life itself, or from the divine, or ultimately from our true self. Because you can have isolation. Loneliness and aloneness are two different things. We can have separation from people and experiences and be completely connected to ourselves and be at peace. So this sense of separation is ultimately an ignorance. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's a mistaken identity. We think we are something than we are. We think we're the thoughts. We believe that we're the thoughts. We believe that we're the emotions. We believe that we're the experience. And we're the awareness behind all of that. And once we accept or believe that we're isolated or cut off from others or cut off from life, cut off from our own self, our own source, the fear starts running the whole show. The ego takes over completely. And that's what leads to the loneliness or the jealousy. Very often it comes with grief and shame. And based on those things, then comes the anger. Because these are all ways we try to protect ourselves from that feeling of separation. when we mistake ourselves for our body or the personal story, we believe that we're a separate self. And it means we're mistaking ourselves for being something very small. And we're not small. We're the universe. The universe is inside us, the macrocosm, the microcosm. The rishis, these ancient masters, were pointing to the truth of who we truly are when we get rid of everything that we're not. Okay? When we don't understand what's going on, when we think we're just like one little person trying to hold everything together, great fear arises. And from that fear, the suffering grows and it continues. And it creates immense attachment to our bodies. We're afraid of death. We're afraid of not having enough money or enough food or enough anything. And we get confused. We have to understand that these attachments are not love. They're not even close to being the same thing. They look similar on the surface. Attachment and love can look very similar on the surface, but they're actually coming from two totally different places. And it's really important to understand that distinction, because attachment comes from us needing someone else to complete us because we're afraid of losing that person. If we lose that person, we're incomplete. We're not whole. And we then say that our happiness depends on that other person being with us and that other person saying the right things, looking at us the right way, being with us and acting in a certain way. And if they don't do that, we get angry. We become disappointed because we had an expectation that person was going to fulfill us. If we come from love, that's honoring the love in the other person as self, and there's a freedom in that. We're celebrating our own existence. We're celebrating the other person's existence. And it's a recognition. The word namaste means when I'm in that place in me of love, of light, of consciousness, and you're in that place in you of love and light and consciousness, we're one. It's a recognition that the same essence that created the whole universe is in both of us. Not just in both of us, it is both of us. So the attachment is essentially coming from fear and scarcity, where love is in wholeness and unity. Okay. And that doesn't mean we're totally detached from life or from caring. It doesn't mean we stop caring. It actually means we care completely. Okay. Our hearts don't become cold or detached or anything like that. It just means that we decide that we're not going to use the other person to fill whatever hole is inside of us. They're not there to save us. We have to save ourselves. And when we can do that, our relationships can become a full expression of life instead of just being something to attempt to fill the emptiness. They're already full. The cup runneth over. Becoming more than enough. We're more than enough. We're not just enough. We're more than enough. And then we have enough to give to everyone else because we're more than enough. Okay? In this, all relationships become sacred because there's no other. There's only the self. And that fills our heart with devotion because we're now recognizing the same consciousness in everyone and everything. So if you're trying to hold on to love, you're not present. It's not about holding on to anything. It's about becoming presence. When love comes from that presence, when it comes from wholeness, it's freeing. We're free. It frees the other person. It's not desperate. It's honest. We're not grabbing onto anything. We're not clinging onto anything. We stop seeking someone else to rescue us. We show up fully for ourselves. And when we don't do that, that's where real pain comes. That's where the hurt comes. And it hurts a lot. This is the whole concept of heartbreak, right? And that is often the hardest thing. Love is our true nature. And sometimes the loss of it, the illusion of the loss of it feels unbearable. And sometimes I think that's what hurts so much when someone feels heartbroken. It doesn't feel like losing another person. It feels like you're losing the version of yourself that exists within them, that existed within them, because they were the mirror that held up for us something to see ourselves more clearly, and that mirror has now been completely shattered. So that's why it can hit so hard. Because for so many, when love ends or changes or slips away, it feels like not just the floor dropping out from under you, but the whole earth becomes unstable. There's no more ground to stand on. And so rejection for so many feels very physical. It's abandonment. It feels like abandonment. It feels so devastating. And losing someone feels like you've lost a part of yourself. And that makes a lot of sense because that's biology. That's how we have survived for 300,000 years. Our nervous system is wired for connection. And if we feel rejected, especially social rejection, it literally lights up the same pain pathways as physical pain does. The body and mind are wired for this connection. And neuroscience shows that personal or social rejection activates these different brain regions. So to the nervous system, it's signaling danger. Disconnection signals danger. Our body thinks it's not safe. It thinks that our life is literally in danger. And so that makes sense. Because most of human history, isolation did mean death. We needed the tribe to protect us. We needed community. We needed tribe. That's how we survived. Belonging was literally the key to survival. And if we were cut off from the group, it meant danger or death. So when we still experience this rejection or abandonment, loss, the body reacts exactly the same if your survival is being threatened. So thousands and thousands of years later, our body still reacts strongly when any connection breaks down. Not just with your intimate partner, not just with a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, with any family member, with a community member, with coworkers. It doesn't matter. And biologically, this is why heartbreak affects everything. It affects our sleep. We start having insomnia. We can't sleep. It affects our appetite. We either overeat or can't eat at all. Our energy levels shift dramatically. Our mental clarity goes out the window. And it affects the immune system. The nervous system and the immune system, they're not actually two different systems. It's the same system. And so the immune system can go haywire. This is why there's so much inflammation. So the cancer is on the rise, autoimmune conditions, all of this. Nobody feels safe. How many people are actually connected to their higher self? Heartbreak, especially heartbreak, shakes the identity of the separate self. When a relationship comes to an end, whether it was over a long period of time or it comes to an end abruptly, it's not just that person we think we're losing. It's the version of ourselves that we believed in. It's the version of ourselves we believed we were with that person. And so heartbreak feels like death. And I've actually heard this now, that when you break up with someone who you're in that space of love with, it's actually harder if they're still living than had they died, because you know they're walking around the planet and that the mind is going over what if I could be with them, what if in the future. Where they're dead, it's finality. And we're not wishing anyone die for that, but it's actually harder when you break up with someone versus if a loved one dies, because we actually do expect everyone's going to die at some point. But heartbreak can often feel like death. It really can feel like something in your ego, in the identity, is dissolving. And even when love is present, it's hard to feel sometimes. When we go through heartbreak, we tend to build walls around the heart because we just don't have a society. We don't have a structure. We don't have a framework for grieving that. We need to normalize that. Okay? And I think this is why everyone's so afraid to get into relationships, and why dating apps and one night stands and all of this is just so prominent. It's easier than actually feeling. People still understand that they need connection, but they don't want to feel because they're afraid of loss. So even when love is there, it's often hard to feel. Love is really our nature, but it's hard to stay open to it because the fear of loss builds these walls. And these things began in childhood, most likely. They have they've described these ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. If you want to know what they are, you can how you rate on this scale. There's free online ACE test, adverse childhood experience test, and you can see how high you rate on that scale. But it comes through rejection or neglect or abandonment or pain, something that happened in our childhood that told us that we were not safe, that our survival depended on these being approved of or being accepted, and we adjusted ourselves. We adapted. The adapted child was there for survival, but those things may not serve us anymore. But ultimately, as a child, I learned that it may not be safe to fully open. Okay. Maybe you were hurt. Maybe you were ignored, shamed. Maybe we reached for closeness with someone and didn't get it, our parents. When we were vulnerable, it wasn't safe. We were taught that if we're vulnerable, something bad's going to happen. Those are hard lessons. The heart learned these crazy hard lessons. It told me, don't open so much, don't trust so much, don't need. That was a big one. Don't show too much emotion. So my heart learned how to protect itself. It did it sometimes in healthy ways and sometimes not in healthy ways. Regardless, it was for survival. But when we're in that state, we do withdraw and we try to control the external environment so we can feel safe. We then learn to not be vulnerable, especially men, I think. Any of my brothers out there, feel free to comment and write me about this because we learned to not be vulnerable, that it wasn't safe, that it was dangerous. And then from that, we go out and seek approval and we doctor up our Facebook and Instagram posts and make everyone think that everything's great and hunky-dory all the time. And we don't speak our truth. We hide the truth of how we're actually feeling. But we need to reestablish connection to that vulnerable self and share our truth. The more we share our truth, the more we share our stories, the more we share our pain and normalize it, we're going to get to love a lot quicker. And we'll understand that everyone's going through the same experience. We're all going through the same experience. It should not be hidden. It should not be filled with guilt and shame. We need to normalize this conversation. And so all these strategies, these adapted child strategies, they're useful for a while. They protect us. They save our life. They get us to where we are all today. But now we're adults. And when we keep these defense mechanisms, they prevent us from intimacy. Number one, with ourselves. Number two, with others. Number three, with the divine. There's no separation of those three. When it comes down to it, it's all the same. But we still, as adults now, are functioning from that adapted child instead of the wise adult. And so the same walls that keep the pain out are also keeping the love out from ourselves and from others. Those walls block the flow, and love is a flow. It's a flow of consciousness. So the same walls that kept your hurt out are keeping us from connection. And that's all ego mechanism, right? The ego seeks safety and certainty in a world where nothing is certain. The only thing that's certain is there's uncertainty. But the ego wants to control everything. And love requires us to open and trust. The heart needs connection. The heart needs truth. The heart needs love. And that requires risk. Are you willing to risk it? It's worth it. There's this concept we have, the dark night of the soul, but I would call it the dark night of the heart. The heart and soul is the same thing. But the dark night of the heart is when it feels like life removes everything we relied on. And there's times in life, there's been a lot of times in my life, especially the last 6 years and especially the last 3 years, when It feels like life has taken everything away. It feels like love is gone. I've had very close relationships, and when I know many people, I've lost family members. My father died last year. When a loved one is lost or dies, and again, remember, dying is actually easier, but if you lose someone you love for whatever the circumstances are, our ego, our identity really starts to dissolve. When friendships change, when our dreams and aspirations and goals fall apart, the path that we trusted suddenly doesn't make sense anymore, or it maybe completely collapses. It just seems to disappear. This is why so many traditions do call it the dark night of the soul, but I want to call it the dark night of the heart. It's that period when everything you thought dissolves, everything you thought was solid, everything you thought was real that you depended on dissolves. And that leads to a period of questioning everything. Can lead to a period of emptiness, of grief, of actual disorientation. Okay. But actually something profound is happening here. It doesn't seem like it when we're in the middle of it, but something profound is happening. And if we're aware enough, we see that later. And if we're even more aware, we can understand that we are going through a death and rebirth. We're the caterpillar crawling into the cocoon to eventually become a butterfly. We understand that's going on. It doesn't mean it makes it any easier. It's just we have an awareness of what's happening, of metamorphosis. But these structures of the separate self are dissolving. And ultimately, that's what we want to have happen to awaken. And it can be really hard. It can be really messy. It can be lonely. Definitely, it's confusing. And for sure, it's painful. And if we can sit with the pain and just honor it and be with it without trying to change it, this dissolution can create space for a profound truth to emerge from within. Okay. Many people awaken not in comfort and ease, but in loss and pain. That's for sure true for me. The pain, the loss becomes a doorway, because when those old structures fall away, something real has a chance to be born. It's like the leaves on the trees in the fall. They die, they change color, and it's beautiful. They make beautiful colors. They die, they decompose, and something new is born a few months later. Nature has a cycle. We live in a world that wants everything instantaneously. We want transformation instantaneously, but we have all the time in the universe. The universe has no time. So there's no time to heal. There's no time not to heal. It's actually a construct of the human mind. The time-space continuum is, it's very shaky at best. Okay? So sometimes the heart has to break. It has to break open before we get to honesty with ourselves, before we can get to that spaciousness within our heart and consciousness, before we can actually be free. And even though the heart breaks, even though it cracks, we really do understand that the light is going to break through at some point. I mean, truly, I have learned the greatest lessons in my life through the greatest pain, through loss, through betrayal, through abandonment, heartbreak, all of it, all of it. And I mean, I've had a lot of those things since early childhood, but just in the last 6 years, feeling all of it feels like it all hit at once. I've gone through it all. I know. And I've hurt people I've loved along the way, unfortunately. And anyone I've hurt, I'm deeply sorry. I pray that you are also healing in the way that your soul needs to heal to return to wholeness. Hurt people hurt people. That's the nature of it. And this may sound absolutely crazy, but really, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. There's no amount of money in this world that could buy those experiences. And while, of course, I don't wish it upon anyone, if you're going through hell, my advice is don't stop. Keep going. There is a cool spring to bathe in when you get out, and that cool spring is love. It's the love that's within you. It's the love that's always been inside of you since the beginning of creation. It's the love of self with a capital S. And to get to that, we do have to go through the process of forgiveness. Forgiveness is actually an ultimate freedom because it's one of the greatest barriers to healing. And to forgive, we have to let go of the resentment. A lot of people struggle here. I struggled here immensely because we misunderstand what forgiveness means, actually. That's important to understand. Okay. What forgiveness is and what it's not. The mind has a tendency, the mind does, it replays the old wounds over and over and over again, holding us stuck in that past experience, even though that past experience may be 50 years old or 2 years old or last week. We're stuck in the past. It keeps playing the same loop pattern. And forgiveness is not about just pretending that nothing happened or approving of or even excusing harm. Not at all. It's not saying what happened was okay. And it doesn't mean forgetting what happened. And it's not about forcing yourself back into something unsafe. A lot of therapy goes into past life regression and these buried childhood memories, and some of that has value and some of it doesn't. But we need to make sure that we're doing that with safety. It's not about going into something that's unsafe. It doesn't even require reconciliation. It does with ourself and with the divine, but it doesn't necessarily require reconciliation with another person, especially if their wounds are not ready to be healed and looked at yet. Forgiveness is just release, letting go, completely letting go once and for all. It's choosing to not carry that burden anymore. I'm done carrying this the way I've been carrying it because my shoulders aren't actually that strong. But it's more than that. I'm no longer willing to let these wounds define my whole inner life and the rest of my future. And I'm done playing the role where I keep rehearsing the same pain over and over again. Okay. And it doesn't mean that the hurt wasn't real and that the pain wasn't real. It just means I'm not going to keep feeding it with my attention anymore. My attention, my prana is so valuable, and I'm going to stop giving it to what I don't want to happen. Not forgiving is focusing our energy on what we don't want to have happen or what we wish didn't happen instead of what is. And so a lot of the times, at least for me, forgiveness is not so much about the other person. It's more about myself. It's my own freedom. Because if I don't forgive, then the past continues to live inside me. And I'm not living in the past. I'm in the present moment. And that resentment, if I carry resentment with me, it's heavy. And I did. I carried resentment with me a long time. And oh my God, it's very heavy. It keeps us tied to the past. It keeps us tied to what happened. And that's a sinking ship. So forgiveness loosens the grip. It's the life raft that gets us off the sinking ship. We hear about these cord cutting ceremonies. We're cutting the cord of that karmic cycle when we forgive. And it's mostly choosing not to suffer anymore because it is a choice. Pain is inevitable. It's part of life. It's part of the paradox of life, pain and pleasure. But suffering is what happens when we interpret the pain in a way that's personal. We're going to feel pain. If we have a body, we're going to feel pain. But we're just choosing freedom over suffering. And it's really not for the other person. It's for you. And what that ultimately means is that we're going to love ourselves. Self-love. The true self, not the small self, the big self. And we often hear about self-love a lot. There's so much talk and posts about self-love. Actually, so many of my podcasts are about self-love, but it's the big self with the capital S. But most of the approaches in the modern world aren't actually focused on self with the big S love. They're focusing on improving the personality, the ego's confidence or the image or validation. But all the spiritual traditions, every single one of them is pointing to the self with the big S. Because spiritual love, self-love, goes deeper. I mean, small self-love isn't deep at all. It's surface level, but self-love goes way deeper than just trying to feel better about your personality. And real life, real consciousness, it's not even about feeling better. It's about becoming better at feeling, because we're here to experience all of it. And so you experience all of it through what Ramana Maharshi came up with or realized was Amma Vicharya, self-inquiry. And this is probably one of the most valuable tools we have, is self-inquiry. We have to ask these questions if we want to get to the truth of who we are. And the first question, the most important question, who or what is the self? Who am I really behind all the stories, all the masks, all the dramas, all the roles? Who am I really? And when I'm alone, am I my thoughts? Am I my emotions, my memories, my experiences? Am I all the pain and wounds I have? Am I my achievements or my awards, right? This is interesting. Michael Jackson, he had the number one album of all time, still does, Thriller. But he had so many awards from every place in the world. He's a award-winning factory, really. And it's really interesting because he didn't keep a single award in his house. He didn't display his awards at all. He had them placed, one in some like room in a museum in some place for other people to look at, and then he had most of them in some secure storage unit because he was concerned about being puffed up with pride. He knew the subtlety of the mind and the ego, and he didn't want any of that. So he never had his awards anywhere. He knew he wasn't those awards or achievements. So we have to really do that self-inquiry. Who and what am I? And especially in modern world with social media and all the internet, am I the image I'm presenting to the world? How authentic can you be when you present your images to the world? How vulnerable can you be? The world needs our authentic self, our vulnerability, our truth. The world doesn't need more plastic images, photoshopped images, or AI images. We need the true self to show up. And when all of our true selves can show up vulnerable and raw, real healing can take place. Okay. But, really coming to the fundamental truth behind all of that is that we are the awareness from which all of these experiences arise. All these things are going to go on. They're going to change. Time will continue. We're still there. We're the awareness behind all of it. And that's what all those ancient deep teachings of every tradition point to, is that we're the awareness. The ego is always going to be seeking approval any way it can. The self doesn't do that. The self is whole and complete. The ego is terrified of isolation, rejection. The self, the self, put the ego on the shelf and return to the self. The self cannot be destroyed. The self cannot be broken in any way. The ego can, not the self. The self is unharmable. It's untouchable. So we need to reframe what we're having our awareness on. Are we aware of the self, or are we identifying who we are as the ego? We need the ego. It helps us pay the bills. It helps us remember our zip code. There's a Buddha saying, meditate, but don't forget your zip code, right? So we need the ego, but we need to use it as a tool instead of identifying who we are with it. Okay. And true self-love has nothing to do with the personality. It has nothing to do with other people admiring our personality or pretending that we're perfect. It's really, really, really about realizing where there's reality, real, real, real. It's all real. I love words. Realizing reality is that you are more than the part of you that got hurt. You're more than the part of you that forgot who you actually are and got confused. We all do it. We all forgot who we are. We all have I amnesia. We forgot who I am is. And it's more than being abandoned or disappointed or loved or unloved by another person. It's about identifying with what has remained untouched within us. It's the recognition of our true nature. Resting in that awareness and what has never been broken or abandoned or lost. When we do that, we begin returning to love. Ram Dass wrote a beautiful book, Return to Love. It's phenomenal. And it's really the deepest healing comes from that simple realization that love was never absent, it was never gone, and only our awareness or the lack of it affected how much we loved. The awareness was obscured. It's that simple. Okay. Part of the human experience. Grief is going to be there. Loss is going to be there. Heartbreak is going to be there. But beneath all those experiences, also we can identify and be aware of that which is untouched. We can stay present. We can stay aware. We can stay open. We can stay capable of love. And on the spiritual path, so many people actually think that they need to become worthy of love. And that's actually insane. Okay. It has nothing to do with becoming worthy. You can't do anything to become worthy of love because you are love. You can't become worthy of being you. You already are you. It's really just remembering that that's who you are. It's remembering that love was not separate from you in the first place. You were never separate. You were never alone. I was never abandoned. I was never disconnected from life. I may have felt those things, and feeling them matters. It actually matters. It allows us to be human. It allows us to be connected. I mean, if you feel pain or hurt or all these things, that means you're connected to life. It means that you are still a divine being and you opted into coming here into this world, to this earth, to have this crazy human experience we call life. And that's it. It doesn't, who you are isn't affected by the play on the stage of the drama of life. And if we can get to that self-love again, if we can get to realizing at least that that's potential, that in Vedanta, the highest realization that we can have is the state of non-duality. And we can't actually talk about that state because we're in duality. But at the deepest level, there's no separation between you and reality itself. And that is what is called self-realization. It's the recognition that there's no separation between self and reality. This is the real union, the real yoga with the divine. Seeing that it's the sacred, it's the divine in everything, in all of life. All of life is consciousness. And real life begins when we live in harmony with the intelligence of life. So life begins when we learn how to love, when we remember how to love. Again, there's infinite paths. At least there's 8 billion paths. There's 8 billion humans. Everyone's path is their own. And the word individual means undividable, indivisible. We're not dividable. There's one living, unified field of consciousness. But all the paths actually end up with the same truth, that love is the ultimate truth, and love is the realization of that unity. Okay? But this only becomes living truth. This only becomes real when you actually feel it in your body and your heart. Other than that, it's just philosophy that you read in a book that we heard from some saint. It becomes real when we feel it. And when we feel it, we start to live differently. When this becomes a lived experience, compassion it arises naturally. The heart overflows because it's more than enough. And in that, there's no effort. You no longer see others as separate. We're no longer filled with defensiveness or reactivity. If someone else is in joy, that joy is yours. If they're suffering, our heart is suffering. That's not sentimentality. That's awakening. That's consciousness. Love is consciousness. Love is this awakening to the highest reality that there's no separation. Love is not something we can earn. It's not something we can find. It's not something we can hold on to. It's not something we have to chase after. It's not something we can lose. Love is the deepest reality of our being. Allow the moments that break your heart to become the moments that invite you to open your heart, to return back to your real self. It's not about becoming someone new. It's not about fixing any problem into perfection. In reality, the only problem is that we think that there's a problem. It's about remembering who you are and what was always here, behind or beneath the fear, the grief, the sorrow, all the stories. And you will start to notice that when you feel open and connected, you're present, you're in the moment, you're present. And notice again when fear and separation arise, because they will, because we still have an ego. But allow each moment, each experience be an opportunity to remember. Find every emotion, thought, experience. Try to tap into that unchanging presence. That presence is love. That presence is the self. That is what we have been seeking all along. It's right here inside of us. So I pray that this discussion was somehow touching your heart in some way and opening the pathway to more love, to loving the self. I want to finish with another quote from Amma on love, because her quotes on love are just so beautiful. In the fullness of love blossoms the beautiful, fragrant flower of compassion. Pure love removes all negative feelings, destroying all selfishness. It expects nothing but gives anything. Pure love is a constant giving up of everything that belongs to you. What really belongs to you? Only the ego. Love consumes in its flames all preconceived ideas, prejudices, and judgments, all those things which stem from the ego. Pure love is nothing but the emptying of the mind of all its fears and tearing off of all masks. It exposes the self as it is. Love should rule. There is no problem which love cannot solve. So thank you for joining me. If this was valuable to you, please share it with someone who you feel could benefit from it. Subscribe to the channel, like it, leave your comments, share your experiences. And until next time, may your pain and wounds become wisdom, and may your grief transform into compassion, and may your heart remember what was never lost. Before you go, if you've been curious about Ayurveda and want to actually understand your body and start applying it into your daily life, I built the complete Ayurveda course for exactly that. It contains more than 30 years of education and practice distilled into 50 lessons, with over 10 hours of content, guided meditations, personalized assessments, and so much more. It's designed so you'll feel real shifts as you go through it. You'll experience more energy, better digestion, increased mental clarity, and a deeper sense of balance. Lesson by lesson, it's all there. So go to Nibodhi.com/courses to learn more.